And so welcome to this webinar. It's our first joint webinar together on tips for leading and staying sane, building the resiliency of you and your teams. And one of the things we'd asked for a start in the Q&A box, which Sharon really jumped on and did, thanks Sharon, is that one thing that surprised you as a leader or manager about the current situation is how quickly staff mobilized to work remotely. Absolutely. So, Pam, anything else to say from your perspective?
I think as we get going, Denise and I had really set a strong intention to help you as a leader come out of this stronger, because I don't think you can stay the same, and you sure could come out of it weaker as a leader or as your organization. And our intention with these tips is to help you come out of the other end.
And so, as Pam mentioned, really the purpose about today is it's building resiliency. And the idea is that you can position yourself, your team, and the organization to come out of things stronger than when it started. I think one of the things that really energized Pam and I for this idea was seeing Patrick Lencioni of the Table Group and some of his colleagues, and is incredibly charismatic. He wrote 5 Behaviors of a Dysfunctional Team and The Advantage, all kinds of really great books. And the way he talked about no one is going to come out of this the same. There is going to be a change. And so, as she said, we really want to help people be stronger. And to do this this is going to be the first of 3 series that we do. We'll create a little bit of a safe space. We'll define what we mean by resiliency and give some actionable, quick tips that start with you as leader, and then some more concrete tips that it's not a full sentence there, but is really more about you and your team or organization, some very specific things you can do moving forward. All right.
All right, so this is a place, and Sharon, you and I may have done this before, to say, let's take some deep breaths. And I think this is so important because it's so easily available to us, this chance to really breathe deeply, and it helps let go all those things that can be flying around in our minds. And if you think about letting everything else in your mind, just put it in an empty basket on your floor, an invisible empty basket, because it'll be whatever you need to pick up later on will be available to you. But let's just take a second, and unless you can cross your legs on your chair like the man in the picture, which is not available to me at this moment, feel your feet on the floor and feel all 4 corners of your feet. You can even wiggle your toes a little bit. And feel your sits bones on the chair, or if you're standing, just stand into your body, and then let your shoulders drop. And just take 3 deep breaths, and picture that you're letting out all the stale air that you don't need, and you're making space for new, fresh air to come in, and that oxygen will feed and replenish all your cells. So just quietly, each one of us, 3 really big breaths, and just enjoy it, just luxuriate in it. All right, and come on back. And in some ways, that's tip number 1, because this is so darn available to us that it's sometimes hard to read the next one.
Okay. So let's talk about how Pam and I are using the word resiliency. And these 2 bullets come from more of a research-based definition. And I can't take credit for it. It's by a guy named Jeff Hall, who does some amazing work with leaders and teams. And the first part of how we're using resiliency is that ability to thrive amidst ongoing change, disruption, and adversity without exhibiting dysfunctional behavior or burning out. And I'd like to think about that because I don't know about you, but when I'm under stress, I'm not really the person, or I'm not always the person I want to be. I can be grumpy, I can be passive aggressive. There's all kinds of things I hate to admit, like, and it's being recorded right now, but that happen to be true. And so when I work on my resiliency, it really means that I'm not going to all those behaviors that have a negative impact on other folks. And I'm also taking care of myself so I'm not burning out, which I think is really important. The other aspect that I think is really important, especially because we're talking about leaders who have an impact on a lot more people than just themselves, is this idea that it's a systemic response to adversity. And a lot of the things that it's impacted by are social, cultural, and environment support factors. So it's not just you, it's your team, it's the whole organization, and it's even, in many cases, the community that you're involved in. Especially, I mean, all kinds of things, right? Whether you're in a nonprofit organization, which I think fits you, or manufacturing, or whatever, it's a really big deal. And an organization is made up of members who all have their own differing levels of resiliency and ability to bounce back. Pam, anything from your perspective that you'd want to add to this?
Well, I actually, I want to add one thing, and then would like to hear, Sharon, from you what you're thinking about resilience. For me, sometimes my own resilience, or the moments when I'm not feeling too resilient, is that I don't feel very able to bounce back. It's like, no, I'm bummed or depressed or feeling kind of hopeless or not looking at the bright side of things. And the more I get stronger and stronger, and I've been actually paying attention to this for a while, I don't stay in that, being down place as long. And so the capacity to come back is really important. And I think about this whole pandemic. I mean, Sharon, what you brought up in the beginning, to say, wow, I was surprised at how my team really figured it out, how to work at home so quickly. That's a big change, because there's lots of things that are involved in that. And so it's more than just the technical piece of how do you work at home. There's a lot of stuff that goes along there.
In terms of the resiliency, there's you, and then there's, the system. And one of the reasons that we start with you is the metaphor of the oxygen mask, which says put the oxygen mask on yourself first so that you stay healthy enough or capable to then oxygenate, I don't know if that's really a word, everyone else around you. Right. So that's what we're doing, starting with you.
And I guess one thing I'd add on that, I was struck when I heard, I think his name is Dr. Anthony Fauci. So he's like the key medical guy for all this. And he said, I'm not doing a good job with my self-care. And he said, I'm working so hard, I'm forgetting to eat, and it's not helpful. And so even his awareness that his natural tendency was to just work flat out, he said, nah, it's not helping me. I got to, figure out ways to take the breaks, make sure I'm getting good food in me, et cetera. And so that was a great reminder to say, wow, what do I need to do myself to make sure my oxygen mask is fully on?
Right. It's not about selfish. It's about being able to serve others better because you're in a better place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Wow. Sharon, it looks like you have a piece of paper to write on. Is that right? Excellent.
All right.
We're going to do both the reflection and physical activity, but it's not aerobics. We're not expecting people to sign up with aerobics. So the first thing to think about is the current reality. When you think about the last 7 to 10 days, write 3 words that describe how you've been feeling. 3 words that describe how you've been feeling. We're not going to ask you to share
And
that.
are you writing your 3 words down?
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah.
It was fun. Okay. Are you ready for the next part? Okay, so the next part, and you can do this sitting or standing, whatever seems appropriate, but I'm going to count to 3 in a moment. And on the count of 3, take a physical stance that shows how you are feeling. Now, when I looked at my 3 words, I'm going to actually have to do a couple stances, but we'll just do this all together. All right. I'll give you a moment to think about what your stance might be. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Oh,
We'll
that's pretty
debrief it
good.
in a moment. Yeah. So think about what you just did, right? And the words those were. Pam, do you want to talk through this one?
Well, I think the next one is no matter how you've been in these last couple of days, how would you like to be thinking about kind of now, maybe for the next couple of months or till things shift from this pandemic, to say, and especially thinking about how you want to focus, show up as a leader. So again, 3 words.
Okay. Do we have our 3 words?
I do.
No, it's coming next. Pam, I'll still let you count this one off.
All right. So on the count of 3, then again, you can close your eyes or not, but move your body and take a physical stance that reflects those aspirational behaviors or characteristics. 1, 2, 3. Oh, couldn't quite see them.
Oh. Well, and if this had been actually a bigger webinar, we might not have been able to see anyone other than you and me. So, what changed between the 2? What shifted? And I'll just share mine first, actually. So what I've noticed now, and I think it's because I don't have kids at home. I think it's made my life easier and I'm used to working from home, but I go between like calm, crazy, and overwhelmed because of all these things I want to do. So my mind is like I was buzzing and I want to do this and I want to do that, but then I don't have the time or everything takes longer. And so my status was sort of like a little schizophrenic going between those 2. And when I think about how I want to be, the qualities that I want to bring are more curious, creative, steadfast. And so there's steadfast, not in the way of being stuck, but steadfast in the way of like forward momentum and strong in the midst of maybe winds blowing, kind of steadfast. And so what shifted for me when I went between those 2 is first I felt calmer. I had more of a sense of control, and I also felt more optimistic and intentional. Like I had more control in some ways. And so that's what shifted for me with the stance, kind of the looking forward. And I even felt more grounded in the way I was standing. So,
Nice.
Pam, how
Nice.
about you? What shifted for you?
Well, I would say that my first words were stressed, energized, and thoughtful. So the stressed, is kind of like on my head, feels like I'm squeezing, and sometimes it's just too much stuff. And a little bit, I got too many things to do, and I don't want to have to do them all at the pace that I think I'm needing to. And the shift was then so the word energized remained. So it's a little bit, Denise, maybe like your word creative, because I'm energized by all these new possibilities, by things that are happening. There's a beautiful thing that I see or experience every single day. And it's like, oh, I want to keep that. But instead of stressed, I said peaceful. And then my last word was kind of hopeful or creative. So I don't want to be moving at a really fast pace. So the peaceful part of this is as I'm exploring new and different things or taking time to try different things with the hope but also creativity. I want something to be different. So the peaceful versus stressed was the biggest. I think this sense of what takes our energy away and what gives us energy is a super, well, it's at least a super important thing for me personally, but some others that I've talked to this week to say, wow, either too many meetings is draining or not enough meetings is draining or meeting stew is draining. So paying attention to what leaves you exhausted versus what, it has you more filled with energy and ready to do something new and different. So that's been super helpful.
All right. Let's keep moving. So one of the things that Pam and I think is so important, and I didn't mean to just keep going, Pam.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're seeing, Sharon, you're seeing our like live vulnerability with balancing flexibility and structure. But is like, where's the awareness of where people are stuck and not assuming that it's all in the same place? And so I'd invite you to take a moment and make a list, first of all, and what are some of the areas that you're stuck? Okay.
Yeah.
Pam, do you want to start? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I do want to start. So one of the tips here is that practicing self-care is really super important. Denise said it's not really being selfish, it's really a requirement. And I talked with a leader this morning who is the executive director of a government organization who said, I have got to have 50-minute meetings or 25-minute meetings so we can at least stand up, move, go get a drink of water, walk around a little bit, walk around the block, so that just sitting is really not helpful. And it really, physically it isn't, but also mentally it isn't. So whatever that circle of self-care is, it becomes even more important. And then I think the second one, the focus on what you can control, followed by what you can influence. We've got a kind of a chart that examines some of those things, but sometimes we get carried away, and I'll personally get worried about things, and then it's like, wait a minute, I can't control that one at all. And one of those was how many people are going to come to this webinar. It's like, no, I can just send out the notices and see who comes. So, maybe I could send out more that I can influence, but determining who actually says yes, I can't. I think the third one, the managing your self-talk, it goes a little bit back to the resilience piece that says if I'm feeling down, it's like, oh my God, I should be getting more done today. I should, whatever my long list of shoulds might be that day. And then noticing, oh, I'm starting to, be a little bit more negative than I want to be. And then I can choose to say, nope, in this time, I'm going to get less done, and I'm going to be okay with that. Or whatever my new mantra might be, but it's managing my self-talk with a little bit of compassion. And then I think the fourth tip we really already showed you, but it's just a reminder, is the more you think about how you want to show up, and that can be how you want to show up today or in this meeting or just in general, and then getting a picture of what that means. And often physically, when you take that stance, or even move your shoulders to be straighter and stronger when you're in the midst of a hard meeting, that can really make a difference and allow yourself to really live into that or lean into that aspiration.
And I'll add to that one thing, that there's an exercise Pam and I were introduced to quite a while ago. This idea of, imagine someone who is acting like you want to be, right? It could be, whether it's a cartoon character or someone real, a mentor, or someone just has that quality or aspiration you want to do. If you can recognize it in them, you also have that capacity within yourself. So you can say, wow, if I were Pam in this moment, how would I start the meeting? How would I be sitting? How would I be standing? How would I be responding in that way? And I would visualize it, and then I could start taking on those qualities, not to copy or mimic Pam, but because she provides a model for me, and then I can intentionally take that on. It's really cool exercise. Let's look at that chart. I've been seeing this on both LinkedIn and Facebook, and no one seems to know who originated it. But this idea that we go from our fight and flight fear zone into more about, we're a little bit more open, less anxious. Our brains are working better, and we call this the learning zone, and then the growth zone, which to me seems like the leaning into other people and the opportunities that are there, the growth zone. And take a moment and look at that, and if there's a particular aspect of it that really catches your attention, about either just catches your attention in general or reflects some aspect of what you want to have more of, feel free to share.
Yeah. So I think this shift to you and your team is we're aware that right in these times, folks really want clarity. They've got so much stuff coming at them. Their own emotions are so chaotic typically, that some of this is about you modeling a different way of being that helps them be able to model, be in their own vulnerable self. And the second thing is the rallying cry. And we're going to go into these, each one of these a little bit more deeply. So these three are going to be the three tips for this. So let's go to the first one. So let me do this one, Denise, just to say this idea. Sometimes sometimes leaders think that they just have to be tough and have all the answers. And it's actually a little bit the opposite right now, because you can't have all the answers because we've never faced this kind of a situation before. So acting like you do have all the answers or that you're sure about it all often can backfire, because they go, wait a minute, I don't think you know all the answers. So hopefully you'll have many of them, or together you'll gather the answers. But for you to just act like, oh no, I got this, versus saying, no, there are times when I am scared or anxious, or gosh, I screwed up today because I was focusing on the task instead of the relationship, or whatever it is. So be willing to do that, and be willing to say what's hard for you. So a piece of this is that in the encouraging your staff to get to know each other and what's going on for them, for you to be willing to share some of that with them. And I'd say, let's shift to the next one then.
Can I add one thing? A little thing.
Of course.
So sometimes what I see from leaders that I work with is, especially if they're working on being optimistic and happy, is that when someone else expresses their level of concern or anxiety, it gets minimized. It's like, oh, well, you shouldn't be so anxious because blah, blah, blah. And I think one of the suggestions that seems to be really powerful for leaders is, instead, when someone shares a concern with them, say, thank you so much for sharing that concern. And if it's also one you share, you can say, that also goes through my mind, or I've heard it from elsewhere, so you're not alone. And you don't have to try to fix it. Because the other thing is, most managers, and leaders are where they are because they're good fixers. You don't have to fix it. You just have to hear it. All right.
That's a good quote. I think this next one, creating a rallying cry, is one that I personally think is one of the most key things. And what we mean by this is this idea that the organization and everybody in it knows what to focus on right now, because right now you could focus on a million different things. There's so many different questions, so much that's uncertain, that helping folks focus and know what to do helps minimize their anxiety and minimizes people getting frozen or unable to move. It's like, oh my God, there's so many things, I don't know how to choose. So a question that you can ask yourself and work this out with your team is to say, what's the single most important thing for us as an organization to focus on for the next 2 months? So an example of that is that a small consulting company actually asked themselves this question. And when they realized, and Denise, I might not remember the exact 2 answers, but one of them was, I think, for them to stay connected to their clients, and that they wanted to add value in this time.
And I have it exactly if you want.
Sure.
It's make this a time of cohesiveness and innovation.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So they wanted to be doing this together so that they had a highly cohesive team, so that they focused on their own organizational health, and that's what they wanted to come out of this. And then in the innovation piece, they wanted to be able to do new and different things with their clients and help their clients get stronger. And I talked with a leader this morning whose most important thing was collaboration and paying attention to the systems that were for the whole organization. And if they did those two things, and so if you can help folks think of, you can bring them back to, nope, we're going to focus on this and not these 10 other things. And nope, how does this pay attention to this?
And it sounds so easy when we say that, right? You just
No.
come up with a rallying cry. And actually, the next step of that is then thinking, if that's a rallying cry, if that's what our main focus is, what are the levers, the 3 to 5 things that we need to put in place or pay more attention to make it happen?
Mm-hmm.
So those become your objectives, sort of like a mini emergency strategic planning session in
Right.
someone. But the idea as well is, there is no going back to an old normal. At least that's what we're hearing. And that's actually what our hope is in some ways, but it's a new normal. And to make it a better new normal, right, where you, again, come out of it stronger and more resilient, you and your team and the organization as a whole, is how can you document what you and your team are learning from all of this? And some of the things to think about then are, wow, what is surprising us? What if we look back, is there anything that we wish we'd had in place sooner?
Mm-hmm.
How helpful might it be to have that in place going forward, or at least easy to access, should we need that kind of thing again? And to really hone in and make sure you somehow document, discuss, and capture what's working and surprising and what could you still keep learning. That's so important. Start getting to the end. I just want to mark from a technique standpoint, if you're replicating some of these things with your team, so to have people write down or brainstorm what surprised them or what have they learned, and then when Pam asked what made that possible, that gets it to the next level. That's the key question: what made this possible? All right.
So as we are coming to a close, and we have missed our 50-minute window, that was kind of our goal, but so we're a couple minutes over that, but we'll make it by the hour for sure. But as we've talked for this last hour, what has stood out for you? Kind of what caught your attention, or do you think you're going to be able to use?